What if that can hear me?
I mean, the audio is on. So it's really oh, we're all blurry and pixelated.
This computer is 77.
Pixelated.
So
It says click if you want to switch to different one.
I don't know if it's working or not. We'll find out.
Can you hear me? Okay, hold on.
Yep. Regardless.
Okay.
And I'm going to introduce you guys. Everybody, this is Debbie Love. I'm not, if you haven't heard of her, what's wrong with you? She lives in Kentucky. She's literally the most wonderful person on the planet. She's going to walk us through a lot of stuff, just basics of kind of the way to teach, how to teach, the way to teach everything. Some of it could be, and more than likely is different, but listen, because it's really, really good advice. I don't know if it was 12 or 13 years ago, the first time you came to Birmingham.
Yeah, it's been a while, yeah. But we've done it like every 3 or 4 years.
Yeah, it was a pretty big revamp for the way that I taught. And it's probably one of the most helpful things, especially in a small time you could use. It'll be fun. So Debbie, these are all our friends.
All right. If y'all have paper, you might want to take notes because I'm going to give you a lot of information and we're going to talk about a lot of different topics. So I'm going to try to cover the ones that Shay was going to do also.
Okay.
So the first, and some of them it's new stuff. So it may be things that you've never heard before. Just listen with open-mindedness and, you know, you can incorporate them or not, but just listen to the reasoning behind the things. If you have a question at any time, please stop me because I don't really like to wait till the end. If you have a question, let's answer it right there and then and there, okay? So we're gonna start by talking about warm-up and the reasoning why we do warm-up. Warm-ups are very, very important, but it's also very important what kind of warm-up you do. Now, in the old days, we all just sat down. When I was in gymnastics, we sat down and we stretched and we did straddles and all kinds of stretches. And we held them for a long time. And we probably did that for 45 minutes at the beginning of gymnastic practices. Then in the mid to late 1990s, they came out with a study that said that we needed to do more of a dynamic warm-up, that what the stretching warm-ups were doing, the long stretches, was taking away our explosiveness during practice. And it was pretty much, it was like 8.2% difference, which was basically a difference between landing a skill and blowing an ACL. So that's just putting it in terms you can kind of understand. So since then, there's been a lot of studies done. It's a greater percent now, the more studies they've done. Those were back in 1996. And so now we do a lot of a dynamic warm-up. That doesn't mean that you can't use this static stuff. It just means that you don't do it for more than 5 to 10 seconds. So if you just have to do your splits and things like that, you can still do them, but don't do them more than 5 to 10 seconds. Because what happens is when you hold them for 35 seconds or more, then what happens is your stretch reflex, which tells your body, I want to, you know, go back to normal, like a rubber band springing back to normal. It relaxes and you start actually getting more stretch and more flexibility. And we don't want to do that before practice. We want to just use the range of motion that we already have during practice. And then when we're warm at the end, cool down is what we'll do when we'll do the long static stretches. So let me talk about some the reason we do the warm up this way. First of all, it increases, I'm sorry. Oh, okay. It increases blood flow to your working muscles quickly. It increases the delivery of oxygen and nutrients to your muscles. It prepares your heart gradually for the increase in activity. It primes your nerve to muscle pathways to be ready for exercise. It improves your coordination and your reaction times. and it reduces the chance of soft tissue, ligament, tendon, and muscle injuries by allowing you to warm up and stretch them gently. It lubricates your joints for easier and less painful movement, and it increases your blood temperature, which allows you to work out longer. That's something that you might not be aware of. And then it prompts hormonal changes in the body responsible for regulating energy production. So again, giving us a better workout and a more efficient one. And then it helps to mentally prepare you for the workout ahead, giving you just a few minutes to get your body pumped up, per se. Okay. Now, there are different types of warm-ups that we can do. We talked about one, and that is the passive or static warm-up, where you sit down and you do all these stretches. Again, that is more of a cool down. But if you just have to do those, only do them 5 to 10 seconds and do it after you do the dynamic exercises. And then the other kind is just a straight dynamic movements that are very much like what you're going to be using during your practice warm-up. Now, what I have found is you can use a specific routine, and there's one on my website, it's an old one, and then I have a new one that I do in lines. And then you also can do like little dances. When I was in Finland in January, and when I was in Austria in February, they play games that mimic all the motions that you're going to be using during your practice. But they also just pick songs off of YouTube and make up warm-up routines to them, and it makes it a lot more fun for the kids. So I would really encourage you to do that, putting in your leg lifts all 4 ways, you know, putting in your arm swings, putting in your stretches, side lunges doing all of the same things that you normally do, but do it to music. And even their youth were doing them, and they had so much fun. So I would encourage you to do that. When I do my warm up, I have them hold their arms up by their ears and they walk in their tiptoes across the floor. Then I have them hold their arms up and they walk in their heels across the floor. After that, they put their arms out and they kick their leg forward, lift their leg forward. And make sure that whenever they're lifting their legs, this is something that's really important and we're not real good about it, that they are not using their lower back to lift their leg, that they're using their glutes. The way you make sure they're doing that is by engaging your core. So you want to pull your belly button into your back and squeeze your bottom before you do anything. Then they'll be lifting with their glutes, and that way they won't be hurting their lower back. Okay, so they lift their leg up in a lib and then stretch it out straight in front of them, back to a lib, out to the side, back in and down. And they do that across the floor with each leg. Then we do lunges where you do the little turns with your chest to open up the upper back. We do the piriformis stretch where you put your one leg across on the knee, your heel on the knee of the other leg. Yeah. And that's a really good stretch. And they walk across the floor alternating that one. Then I do the high knee runs. I do kicking bottom. We do skipping. We do long jumps forwards and long jumps backwards, which are not very long really, but they're sit swing jumps for back handsprings and tucks. So I don't want any arch when they're doing those. So they swing their arms up and then they jump, keeping their core tight at all times. And then at the end, they do the karaoke where they run with one leg in front of the other. Grapevines is what a lot of people call them. Okay, so that's basically the warm-up I do. And then I do a few exercises. We do a plank hold. We do a one leg hamstring hold. Excuse me. We do some shoulder lifts. They're called empty can lifts. And what they are, excuse me, I'm so sorry. They lay down on their stomach and they have their arms by their ears. They have their thumbs up and they lift their arms 20 times. Then they have their thumbs down and they lift them. Then they go to a high V, thumbs up, thumbs down, a T, thumbs up, thumbs down, and a low V. And that's really good for opening up the upper back for tumbling, which we should be using instead of our lower back. We'll talk about that probably some more later during the conditioning phase. And then we do candlestick roll-ups, okay? So those are the basic. I also have them hold a handstand for a minute, either with a partner with a nice long stretch line, or we do it against the wall with only their nose and toes touching with, again, a nice stretched line. But holding that handstand is really, really important, especially to our guys, because those are also the stunting muscles. I also encourage during warm-up shoulder stabilization, which is really, really important. It's something that we don't do at all. Again, we'll talk about that later in conditioning. So that is the reason why we need to warm up the way we do. Do you have questions about the warm-ups?
I think we're okay.
Okay. All right. So I want to go into teaching techniques. There's a couple things I want to talk about. One is we have to be able to teach every skill in 7 different ways. There are 7 different learning styles. And most of your major leaders of today will tell you to learn what your student's learning style is, and then teach accordingly. So we're going to talk about each learning style and how we would teach someone. And I'm going to let you all kind of brainstorm with me on that. And we're going to learn how to teach them, what techniques to use to teach athletes that have these learning styles. And then how can we put this into one practice? Okay, because it's kind of hard, but you need to do it. So the first one is the linguistic learner. So this is the learner that they learn through written word, written directions. The person always takes the directions out of the box and follows them to the T. So how are we going to teach this linguistic learner? Tell me. Can't hear you.
Gotta be loud.
Yeah. What?
Like writing it down on something?
Yeah, exactly. Like I write explicit directions for them so that they know what each part of the skill is supposed to, be in the written word. Exactly. Also, you can explain it to them with words, and they want very detailed instructions. It's not very general. So whenever you're teaching a new skill, you need to do this anyway. I have found that one thing that we can do that will hit all these linguistic kids, and also is a good stress reduction technique, which is another topic for another day. But one of the stress reduction techniques is to script all your skills. So I have all my athletes write down in short action verbs and power words their whole routine, but every skill that they do. Like for a back handspring, it would, for me, it would be sit, swing, jump, snap. Okay. So I would take an 8-count sheet and I would write it down on the 8-count sheet exactly how that skill would go. I've used this with youth. They sometimes can do pictures, but their parents can help them and they can write words and they have to memorize those words. So then later on they can visualize when they hear the music, doing that routine with a scripted word. And it also keeps them in the zone because their cognitive brain is working all the time. So the emotional side of our brain, which is, doubt and fear and all those emotions that we really don't need, can't come over and play in that cognitive side when it's working. So it's a really good way to keep the kids in the zone, both in practice and in performance. Any questions on the linguistic learner?
That's good. Good.
How do you know if they're linguistic?
How do you know it? If they ask you to explain it to them, that's probably a linguistic learner. Okay. If they come up and say, I don't understand, can you really explain it to me? And you might say, oh, yeah. In fact, I'll write it down at the end of practice for you. Other questions on that? The next one is a rhythmic learner. A rhythmic learner is one that has to have music, counting, clapping going on. they really can't do their best work unless they have some of that going on. So these are the kids that you're getting ready to do, you're practicing tumbling, getting ready to warm it up, and they say, will you count for me? More than likely, they're a rhythmic learner and they need that rhythm of the counting. My daughter Whitney was a very rhythmic person. When she was younger, we'd go in the gym and in the afternoon, and she'd turn on cheer music, like really, really loud. It was too loud, but anyway, it was really loud. But she'd turn on that music, and then I'd go up front, and the secretary would say, "Can you please have her turn that down?" And she'd say, "But Mom, I need it to do my best tumbling," and she really did. So, you know, music is a good thing to have going on. I know I've been some places where they have absolute silence. That is just horrible for these rhythmic kids. I really don't know any kid that needs absolute silence. So warm up should be kind of a relaxed time, and music is very important to them. It is also one of the stress reduction techniques. Again, there's a lot of them we'll talk about through the day. Any questions on that rhythmic learner?
I don't see how any gym could be silent. It stresses me out.
Yeah, no, it's too much for me. Even a gymnastics gym, I was in Illinois, and there was Illinois Gymnastics Institute many years ago. And most gymnastics gyms are very quiet and somber and all this stuff. Well, I walked in this gym, and he had a couple of Olympian or hope to be Olympians there. And it was the noisiest gym I've ever been in. He had these Olympian hopefuls, and they were over there yelling for the level 3s and 4s. The level 3 and 4s were yelling for the others. And it was just the most encouraging, affirming gym. And I think a lot of our kids are like that. They need that. The next one is the intrapersonal. This one is INTRA. These kids are your wallflowers. They are very quiet. They are off to the side. They do not like groups, but they're very good athletes, generally speaking. So when you're working with one of these athletes, we need to encourage them to be part of the group. And sometimes I will actually make them a leader to kind of bring it out of them, because they're very, very good. Okay. But they do work much better in a one-on-one situation. So if they're really struggling on something, I would schedule a private with them. They're the ones that need that one-on-one. They relate better to one person rather than a group. In fact, groups sometimes gives them anxiety. So you're probably picturing some of your athletes right now. But we don't have a lot of these, but we do have some. So be very observant of them. Question? Okay. Next is the interpersonal. That's INTER. And these are your little social butterflies. The ones that drive you nuts because they talk all the time. So what we need to do is put them in different groups, so they can't talk all the time. They have to get to know each other, but don't put them in a group very long because they will start talking. The main thing we need to do with these kids is allow the conversation before practice and after practice, maybe a little bit during warm-up once they learn their warm-up, but they need to understand and be disciplined enough that they know during practice this does not go on. It's not social hour. And that's kind of hard with like youth age. I have found that they are very, very hard. These little socialites on youth age are absolutely horrible. They're the ones that are going to be on Twitter and Instagram all the time. And you're probably going to have to tell them they're doing something they shouldn't, because they do that a lot too. But these kids are kind of hard, but they just need to have their boundaries. They will abide by the boundaries. Questions on that? They also will figure out things, like if you have a problem going on in a stunt, you know, to get them together with another group and they'll figure out what's going on. They talk so much that they'll pretty soon figure it out. The next one is the kinesthetic learner. These are your feelers, and we have a whole lot of these in cheerleading. In fact, a lot of these kids tumble by feel, which is not necessarily good, because it's why we have such appalling tumbling right now, because we have legs twisted. People are not setting before they do skills. Last year, Worlds, when I watched it, I was just appalled. I was like, oh my gosh, this is terrible. And we're giving them full credit for these skills, and they are a mess because they're nowhere near technique that should be happening. So kinesthetic learners, they need to feel that they're going up. So like in tumbling, you might make them go up to like a 32-inch resi or even higher. So have them tumble up so they can feel that lifting part of this skill. In stunting, you might give them a medicine ball, or I use rubber bands with shoes on the end of the a link of my rubber bands, and they do the skill so they can feel it right, because the rubber bands won't work right unless you first go up and then everything goes up together at the end. So doing skills that are going to make them feel the skill. An example I give is this: you might tell them they need to squeeze their bottom so much that if I put $100 bill there, they couldn't take it out. I mean, that's very visual, a very kinesthetic feeling, you know. So kinesthetic people, we have a lot of them, so be really on the lookout and observant of those types of learners. The next one is a visual. We have a lot of these too. The only thing wrong with our visual learners is they still need to learn technique, because they're the ones that go home and try everything. And since they're not really feelers, they didn't feel it right, and they're not really linguistic, so they're not listening to the directions very well. So they do what they think they perceived in their brain they saw, and sometimes that's not the best thing in the world. So we need to show them videos of well done skills. That's probably the best way, because they like to look at YouTube a lot. So they need to see the good stuff, okay? The last one is the spatial learner. It's S-P-A-C-I-A-L. Now these learners, we don't have a lot of them, but there are some. And when I tell you what they're like, you'll understand. They want to see the whole picture. They want to know how far something's going to go and how much room it's going to take. These are the kids that when you have a person on a Velcro strip and another one, and then you tell them to go through the middle, they balk on you and they won't do it. It's because they don't know if they've got room. It's not that they're being stubborn. So what I do with these kids is take 2 cones and put it on either side of them. And they have to learn to do the skill through the middle of the cones first. Then I replace one of them with a person. And then lastly, I'll add the second person, okay? So these kids can get a little crazy when they have to be kind of jumbled up into a small space, because they really, until they see it and feel it, they're not going to believe that it's going to happen.
The same kids that don't like tumbling off of the rod floor or the...
Absolutely, yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah, and by the way, there is a surefire way of tumbling off of anything and they won't miss it. And that is if you step a foot away from the edge and take 13 of their steps, heel to toe, that is where you put your hands for the round off, and you will never go off of it. You may have to adjust it if they have a short round off or back handspring, but you will not go off the end of the edge. So give you that little tidbit. Any questions on the 7 learning styles? Can you see how that we need to incorporate all those different things into our training? I mean, we have to be a psychologist to be a coach, you know. I mean, we really do. So, questions on those?
Come up here, Jenny, so you can hear you.
What if one kid shares small amounts of each stop?
Yeah, that's a tough one. And there are kids like that. I've had kids like that. And many times I have to take them and do a private with them. Really. Anytime you're just don't, like, you know, some kids that look at you with this blank stare and you think, I'm just not getting through to this kid at all. And you probably aren't, because we've missed the boat or they have a little bit of everything in them. Then's when you need to take them aside and let's schedule a private so I can go over all of this with you and try different methods and see which one works. Because you can't do trial and error during practice. There just isn't enough time, you know. Does that make sense?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Any other questions?
Yes, I have one.
Okay.
There, like I realized that certain athletes are more forced to do cheerleading. Like, it's one of the many things that their parents just put them in. How would
Yes.
we work on like motivating those to try to
Okay.
push and try harder?
That is a really good question. I've worked with a lot of kids whose parents were forcing them to do things. Let me tell you this story, and then I'll tell you what I would do. I had a little girl I've been doing privates with for probably 9 months. And she had a mental block and she wasn't making any progress. And so one day I looked at her and I said, honey, I said, do you want to do cheerleading? And she said, no, my mom's making me. I don't even care. And I said, well, what do you want to do? And she said, I want to do track. And I said, well, okay, I'm not going to do more privates with you because this is wasting your mom's money and your time. I'm going to tell your mom that you want to do track. So I told her mom when she came in that she really did not want to do cheerleading. She wanted to do track. And she did go ahead and take her to track. She made her stay for a while longer. But some kids just plain don't want to be in it. And that you need to be honest and transparent with kids, and they will be with you. But going back to your question, a lot of times we are not really able to motivate kids. What we have to do, and I do this through a lot of sports psychology, which is not really our topic today, but I'll do a little bit of it with you. We'll do a little bit of everything. But I use sports psychology to train them. First thing I do is I take John Wooden's Pyramid of Success, which is 26 character qualities that are required to be a good team member and athlete. And we go through those qualities. And in the process of them becoming a great person of high integrity and character, their desire will be to do good, to do better. So I have found by training their character, they become better motivated to be better athletes, even if they don't want to be there. And they will enjoy that part of it to the effect that they will become better athletes automatically. I honestly, that you cannot, as an individual, you cannot motivate kids. That if you motivate, it's going to be something that's short-lived. Motivation has to come from within the kid. So we have to train the kids to be great kids first. When they have great character, they're going to work hard automatically on whatever it is that they want to do. Does that make sense?
Yes, ma'am. I just had a experience like that. I was doing a private, and I could tell she wasn't trying hard. I was like, do you want to be here? Like, is this really what you want to do? She was like, no, not really. And I was like, when they had a conversation with her mom, and now she's taking swimming or something.
Good. And you don't want to, you don't want to lose kids, but what's best for the kids, what they need to be doing. I was in a family, in my family, what I did was not really accepted as kosher. My family was a very conservative Christian home. My dad was a minister. We couldn't do most anything. And when I chose to be a cheerleader, that was not a popular thing. And of course, I've done it, all my life. And actually, the year before my dad died, which was 4 years ago, when he was 86, he finally wrote me a letter and validated that I had done a good job with what I decided to do. But I had to wait all that time to get that validation, but it was because I wanted to do it. I was never pushed to do anything like that. But then on the other hand, I know parents who push their kids way, way, way too hard, and it becomes part of the parent's life, and that's not right either, So we need to just communicate with these parents too, that it's not their job. If I told you, I have a good friend, and I go to her gym quite a bit, and her daughter had a mental block. And so I came to the gym one week, and she said, okay, Debbie, she's got to do her full by herself. And I said, well, we'll work on it. So we worked on it and got her to do her full by herself. She said, okay, Debbie, you got to do double. So I was talking to the kid, and I said, I said, I'm not going to make you do these. I know you will do it when you want to do it. And I told the mother and the grandmother, I said, you guys have got to quit pushing her. You've got to not, when she comes home for practice, your question is not how many fulls did you do, not how many doubles did you do, but did you have a good time? Because if these kids are not having a good time learning and growing and being challenged, it is not worth it for them. And it's not going to be a positive force in their life. So we have to change that for them. And I just find that the best way is by, creating good character in the kids. Other
Thank you.
questions? Does that help you?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Any other questions? Okay, I want to talk about leadership styles too, because this again is part of learning about your kids. There's 5 basic leadership styles, and we do these in Impact, which is a leadership program of USASF. I used to help do it when it was in person. Now that it's on virtual, it's just Mary and Karen. But there are 5 different learning styles, and 5 different leadership styles. And you have to understand that each one of these kids is a leader. So you need to be pointing these out to your kids, that everyone is a leader of some kind. So the first one is the rose leader. This is the person that always is on time, is at everything she's supposed to be at. They're dressed, always in the correct attire, always, almost ready at performance and everything. So they really are a leader, but they don't talk very much. So they lead by example, but they are a leader and someone that others need to be following. Actions speak louder than words. And so we need to define these leaders for people so they know that that is a leader and it's somebody that they need to be like. Another one is called the lion. And the lion ones are the courageous kids. These are the kids, when you get ready to do a new stunt or a new skill, they're ready. Okay, guys, we can do this. So they're risk takers. They're courageous. They will try anything. Sometimes you have to calm them down just a little bit because some things aren't quite as realistic as they think they are. But we need our lions. They're our courageous kids. The next one is the megaphone. This is the type of athlete that we normally think of when we think of a leader, the loud one, the boisterous one, the one that's, always taking over the leadership. And we need those megaphones, but the megaphones need to address the roses and the lions and the other 2 in a minute that we're talking about. And they need to realize that they too are leaders, that you don't have to be noisy to be a leader. It's kind of funny because all this stuff that's been going on in the world lately, it's like there's a silent majority that are not saying much, but they're leading, but doing exactly what the noisy minority wants them to do, So, a lot of us live our lives the way they should be lived. And I think it's hard to get the silent group to come forth and really let their leadership come out, because we don't address that they are a leader. You know what I mean? The sun is the next one. And this is the encourager. These are the kids that come into the gym and they're always, come on, I know you can do it. Or come on, guys, we can get this done, Or they may even be encouraging to you as a coach. Coach, I really appreciate you, And I think these kids are so important because they just build up a good vibe in your team, and all the other kids love for them to be around. I think that they radiate that encouragement from the core of their being. They're happy people. They've decided, they've chosen to be happy regardless of any situation that might come their way. And much as our core radiates the energy and strength to the rest of our body, so the inside of them, their core principles radiate encouragement to everyone they meet. And then the last one is the star. And this is the person, and normally this would be an older, either a high school or college age, because they've learned to use all of the other leadership styles when they are appropriate. So the sun really kind of has a feeling for what's going on in the situation and realizes, it needs encouragement, or it needs somebody to be very boisterous and say, well, this is what we're going to do, So questions on those. You can go through this with your kids and then have them, a fun activity is to have them decide what each other are. So write all the names of the team down. And after you talk about them, then have them write down what they think each of the others is, and then see how close they get. You know, it's a fun activity. But I think it helps them appreciate the others better. I did this with a college group, and later on you would hear, oh, she's a Rose. Watch what she's doing. She's doing it right, you know, things like that. Questions on that? Make
No, but I like
sense?
the exercise. I like having them kind of not assign each other, but identify what they think each one of them is.
Yeah, it's a really fun activity. Some people did it like Jennifer Graham, in Champion in Texas. She had clothespins, and then she made like a rose and a lion and a megaphone and a sun and a star, and they picked what they were and they clothespinned it to their name at the end of it. And then she had all the others clothespin what they thought they were. So it was a pretty cool activity.
It'll be fun here because of those, like a lot of the places I've worked and the kids I've worked with,
Yeah.
the dichotomy of kids we have here, I can think of like a perfect to the T example for every one of those on, say, our Worlds team. Like,
Yeah.
to the exact T. It's really fun.
Yeah, it'll be fun. And you make the little figures is good. I'm not going to go over these, but I don't know if you've ever read about the Enneagram descriptions of personality types. You might go into that. There's some free tests. It's ENNEAGRAM. And these are like personality tests. And I think you would find that would be a lot of fun.
Yeah.
As well. Okay, questions on techniques for teaching. Does that help you all?
Yes.
Okay. Do you have any specific situations that you don't think you could use what we've talked about in?
No, I think these are great.
Okay. All right. So next thing we were talking, my subject was landings. So what I want to talk about is posture in and of itself. We kind of got into that a few minutes ago when I was talking about lifting with your glutes, but we want to define posture. And posture is your body being in a position so that it can be the most efficient. Okay. So it's not just about alignment, but it's also about engagement. So alignment and engagement equal posture. Now let me talk about that. We already know, because we've studied this many years ago, that there's 4 power centers that stack on top of each other in order for us to have our maximum strength. So the first one was the head and neck. It was called the GPS of the body, and it tells you where to go. So if my head looks down, I go forward. If my head goes back, I go backwards. So in order for me to engage the head and keep it neutral, I have to put my tongue to the roof of my mouth behind my upper teeth and hold it there. That locks the muscles in my neck so that my head doesn't move. So the first thing we have to do is how to engage our head in a neutral or good posture position. So again, you put your tongue to the roof of your mouth behind your upper teeth, okay? The second area is your extensor area. So it's the extender part of our body. It's what makes our body go up. It's 12% of every skill that we do, okay? And it's actually the 12% that we don't like to do. So what it is the extension of our shoulders and our upper thoracic area or torso. Now, I'm just going to give you an example so you can understand. First of all, engagement of this area, make sure that your shoulder blades are no more than 2 to 4 inches apart. So we need to lift our shoulders up because most of our shoulder blades are about 7 to 8 inches apart. And they need to be pulled back and be no more than 2 to 4. But we don't work those muscles in our upper back enough to pull them back naturally. And so we're slump shouldered. Many of our kids are like that. And over time become very, very tight, and it's very hard to get that more flexible. Okay. And it has 70 to 80% flexibility, mobility in it. Okay. Now, so let's talk about a skill, a back handspring and a back tuck. Okay. As we get ready to do these skills, we sit in the athletic stance. The athletic stance has a proper posture too. Our whole body is engaged. So again, our head is engaged. Our shoulders are pulled within 2 to 4 inches of each other. Let's engage the bottom 2 areas. Our core, we pull our belly button to our back and squeeze our bottom. Squeezing the bottom links the top of our body with the bottom of our body. It helps them talk to each other. And it's the one thing that most of our kids don't do. And then squeezing our adductor muscles, or the legs that pull our thighs together, engages the lower half as well. So again, to engage the whole body, we have to start in that position, and that's proper posture. Proper posture equals proper power. So no matter now what position that we go to, we are still engaged. So we are engaged. We have put our tongue to the roof of the mouth, behind our upper teeth, pulled our shoulder blades 2 to 4 inches apart, pulled our belly button into our back, squeezed our bottom, and squeezed our adducting muscles in our inner thighs together. Now we're going to sit. We're going to push our bottom back and then bend our knees, and our shoulders are going to be immediately over our knees and toes. That's called the athletic stance. It's 10% of every skill that we do, okay, from a stand. So we got 10% is the athletic stance, 12% is the lift. So let's talk about, you're in the athletic stance. We're going to swing our arms back. Why do we swing our arms back? Because it primes our arm muscles for a strong swing forward. So we prime our arms, and then we swing our arms until they get here, and we begin to feel them lifting our body off the ground, because that's their job. We never wait for that. Our kids don't even understand it. I have 2 new drills I do for that. One is I put butterflies wings that I got at the dollar store on their back, and they have to hit their wings before they can jump into a handspring or stand up, jump for the tuck. And that works really well. Another one is I have them stand beside a bed, and they have to swing their arms, and when they feel them pulling their arms back, they just fall onto the bed. So it's something they can do at home. It's not a jump back. I don't want them doing jump backs anymore, because they jump before their arms are lifting them off the floor. We've got to allow our torso to lift us off the floor. That's 12% of the skill. It's our set, whether it be a standing skill or a running skill. And it's what we're not doing at all in our sport right now. It's very rare that I see anybody lifting like this. And I mean, your arms can be a tiny bit bent like this, that's okay. But just pulling them off the floor to this position is not what we want, okay? Does that make sense?
Yes. When you, just for clarification for some people, swinging back, priming the arms, how far do you like them to go back?
It's going to be different for different people. You can't go back far that you move, like you don't want to move like this out of your athletic position, okay? So it's here until they stop while you're in that nice engaged athletic position. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Yeah. So a lot of people use their upper body to do that skill. So that's all they're doing, is using their chest to do the skill. And that's not the way we need to do it. Make sense? Okay, so when we take this to landings, we want to land in the same way we started. You want to land in the athletic stance. Now, different people, based on the strength of their hamstrings and their glutes, which need to be equal in strength, and most of the time are not, okay? So different people can drop a little lower in the athletic stance than others can when they land. It's based on the strength and the build of the body, okay? So that's something you need to build their quads, and you need to build their hamstrings up a lot. You can't do too much hamstring work. You can do too much quad work, because most people, that's all they do. But the glutes and hamstrings need a lot of work. And those are going to be the landing muscles that we need. They're also their jumping muscles. So when you increase the strength of that, you're also increasing the posterior kinetic jumping chain as well. Okay? And we'll talk about that again a little more in just a second with conditioning. So when you land, you want to bend both at the knees, the heel, the ankles, and the hips, because you want those landing forces, which can be up to 8 to 9 times their body weight coming down, to be, you want them to be pushed over all 3 joints, so it doesn't put too much stress on one joint, if that makes sense. I like to take kids and put them about 2 or 3 feet up based on their age, and just have them jump and land, stick, and then stand up and clean and walk off. I think that's really good. I mean, like that would be a good training exercise, maybe to do in a warm up one day. You have them jump up to a block and then jump, stick, and walk off. Many of our kids can't stick because they bounce off the floor because they've never had to land. And many of our kids stick their bottom out and land, putting all that stress on the lower part of the body. And we just don't want that. You want the ankles, the knees, and the hips to bend. Make sense?
Completely. We have a fun addition. A lot of our kids are cheering at a local middle school this year.
Yeah.
And the coach has asked them to land still holding their legs in a tuck with their chest out.
Oh, no.
And I have been like, be respectful.
Yeah.
Say you're trying, land with your chest up, please, like in a good position. And one of these kids, even on a flat floor, tumbled 7 or 8 feet in the air. And he's having to land holding like into a tuck. I was like, baby, just be respectful, say I'm trying, and keep landing right.
No, that is not, yeah. And I've had that before too. And I'll just say, I'm sorry, but science is teaching us a better way now, you know, and just, you know, it spreads the forces over those 3 joints, so it has less impact on the body and less risk of injury. And all they have to do is just look it up and read it, because it tells you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's just, we can keep them for a lot longer.
Oh, absolutely, because you won't have overuse injuries either. The old gymnastics landing where you put your hands out here is really a very good landing, and I would encourage it. Land, squeeze, you know. Other questions on that? Okay, I am going to save conditioning for a minute and go over some of these other things that Shay was supposed to go over, and then we'll move on to the conditioning, because I know that's one that's really important to y'all. First, let's talk a little bit. He was talking about class structure. I got your list too from today, but I'm going to talk a little bit about class structure if you're teaching classes. What I do in there is the first 5-10 minutes is warm up and some conditioning, and I do some conditioning with the classes. The next 10 minutes is basics in lines. That's the skills that they should have to be in that class. Of course, if it's a level 1, then you're going to go straight to your, you're going to set up different drills for them. And then they're going to go around and do that for the remainder of the class until the last 5 minutes. And then you're going to do a cool down. I usually do the splits with my classes. So drill wise, I have my whole drill thing. I think that you all might have had that before. Ricky, do you have that?
Yes.
Okay.
It's
so
not,
there's
you still have a lot of it on your website too, so I can just.
Oh yeah, the website has a lot on it, but I had a whole document on drills. And if you don't have it, you can look and see. And if you don't have it, I'll send it to you. Okay. But it has a whole lot of drills on it, pretty much everything. And then the rubber bands are, there's like 75 exercises, and they're listed on the website, so you can do those. But that's basic class structure, is warm up, line drills for the skills they should have to be in that class, and then stations for the remainder of the time. And situate yourself in a class so that you can see everything going on. Like there should be one spotted station for you that you're at, but make sure that while you're spotting, you can also glance around and see that everything else is going on. Okay. And then at the end, do some kind of cool down, whether it's a game or doing the splits. We talked a little bit about culture. Let me just tell you what I feel a gym should be like. I feel like my expectations, and this is what I did when I worked at UK for the 2.5 years I was there. I changed the culture to a better culture. And it didn't last, obviously. But after I left, I think it got terrible again. But anyway, they, but the culture was one of, we care about each other. We encourage each other. We want to see everybody succeed. So we're helping each other. So I'm teaching character, but my expectations are of a gold standard of excellence, if that makes sense. So they know what I expect, but I don't have to yell to get it done. I don't have to force them to get it done, because on one side, I'm doing my sports psychology segment, which I did monthly when I was there. And we'd do an activity that would increase that. I also gave them little cards, quote cards, positive inspirational quote cards before every kind of performance that we had. And just to tell you, I didn't know how college kids would respond to that. I knew that my youth juniors and seniors and all-stars had loved it. But when I went to the college, I said, okay, I'm going to do it anyway. Well, after I'd been there 2 years, the Christmas before I left, the White Squad, which wasn't supposed to buy me anything for Christmas, they came bring a gift for me. And the gift was 2 albums. Each of them had written me a letter, and almost every one of the letters had the very first quote card I gave them. And then the guys emptied their pockets and showed me they had every single card I'd ever given them. So those kind of things are really important to those kids, really important. And the activities that we did, I don't think that they'll forget them ever. So, you know, you've got one side, which is the sports psychology and the training, the mental training, which is 90% of what we do. So I'm training them to be good people, to be good leaders, to understand each other better and to care about each other, and be kind, you know, and loyal and things like that. And on the other side, I'm conditioning them in such a manner and keeping the risk of injury low so that I can expect a super high level expectation of a standard that I'm looking at. So I think that those are the two things that have to intersect for you to have the culture of a champion mindset, if that makes sense. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Okay. So I don't ever compromise on technique. It doesn't matter if you tell me you're going to leave, I don't care. You know, I am not going to compromise on technique, but neither am I going to compromise on character. My core principles won't allow me to compromise on either one of those things, if that makes sense. So that's just a little bit about culture. I also, in developing my program, I develop progressions that they follow, certain skills they have to move to the next level. And there's no question in those skills. If you don't own that skill, and again, owning is the word. There's 3 levels to understanding a skill. The first one is a visual. You see it, you love it, you want it. The second is the associative. You associate it with your body and learn it. And for far too many of us in our sport, this is where we stop and go to another skill. The third level is ownership or mastery. That's when you can do that skill 10 times out of 10 with hardly any flaws. And then and only then should a skill be put in a routine. So mastery of the skill is my definition before you can move into that level. Okay. So I have a certain group of skills that have to be done before they can move to the next level, and they have to be owned. I have progressions that you have to follow, and I don't compromise on it. I never have in my 53 years. So you don't have to, and you can still be successful. You might be a little bit slower than others at the beginning, but if you're conditioning your kids and following proper progressions, they are going to eventually zoom in their progression, because they get to the point where they can do just about anything, because their body is strong enough, their mind is strong enough and resilient enough, and you have high expectations and they want to reach them. So questions on that?
For our staff, I feel like it's important to point out, and I fail at getting, like, that becomes contagious.
Yes, it
Like,
does.
if you can get a group of 20 to love and actually this is what they believe in, the next
Yeah.
week it'll be 25, and then you end up with programs like cheer athletics, et cetera, where,
Right.
like, everyone in the
Exactly.
program expects themselves to be great instead
Right.
of coaches having to ever honestly say a word.
Right. I make up activities like, now I'll give you a couple examples of some activities I've done. I went out and at the dollar store, I found these little Jenga towers. They're miniature Jenga towers. And as a team, we took the little blocks out and they wrote with markers on it, wrote the characteristics of a successful team. And then we built the tower back up. So that was one of the exercises we did, very cheap activity. Another time I took small cans of Play-Doh. You can get these little bitty cans of Play-Doh, and they had to make a structure. I've even done this with juniors. They had to make a structure that represented their life right now. And we had some really good discussion on that. So a lot of our kids are hurting, and especially right now with all this pandemic stuff, you know, it's crazy. A lot of kids are going to have a lot of emotions that they need to let out. So I've done that. Another one I did, we made a little key tag with 8 beads, and the little plastic beads were, let's see if I can remember all of them. It was green, and we talked about we're all growing. Yellow for being cautious with our teammates' mind and body, because they're all individuals and all precious, and we're all becoming a masterpiece that we're meant to be. The white was for purity of movement, when we're all doing our job completely and to the best of our ability. The blue was for completion, when we do a routine and we hit it. The red was for blood, sweat, and tears, for all the energy and the work that we put in to our routine. Let's see, I'm trying to think. The pink was for empathy, for being empathetic with each other and thinking before we speak or act of how the other person is going to react, and putting ourselves in the other person's shoes, which is something our kids today really need to learn to do. The purple was for respect. We're all royalties, so we all demand the same amount of respect from each other. Can't remember my third one right now. White, blue, pink, red. Oh, orange for caution. We're not all still growing. We're not finished being created and produced yet. So being patient with each other, because we're continuing to grow. So those are just 3 of the ideas. You can be creative. I did about like 18 high schools last year in Illinois, and I did a 5-hour seminar with them. I did my stress reductions, and then we did tumbling, and then the last hour was one of my sports psychology activities. So again, that's 90% of what we do. So you need to work on it. Questions on that? You had talked about overspotting. Let me talk about that for a second, and then we'll talk about shaping for tumbling skills, and then we'll do conditioning. Hopefully we've got time to do all that. Okay. First of all, I don't spot very much anymore. I do a lot of shaping in the early days. A lot of shaping as far as candlestick shapes, things like that. I want them to understand everything from a candlestick position. So I have them get in the candlestick position. They pike in that position. They tuck, which is very light tuck. I don't even like to teach tucks. I teach layouts and then bend their knees slightly, and that's a tuck. So my kids should be strong enough to do a layout when they're level 3, okay? Because literally the tucks that we do, bringing our knees real close to our chest and all that, are not tucks. That's not really a shape. So I do a lot of training of that candlestick shape, bending slightly to produce the tuck position, okay? I do a lot of shaping as far as the handstand and as far as them understanding how to engage their core. So a lot of shaping, and I do a lot of hands-on shaping. I push your belly button in so they can really feel it. I don't think that you can do a total hands-off approach. Guys, just be careful. that you don't touch areas that you're not supposed to, or use the back of your hand, which is always a good thing to do. Goodness. The other thing, once they get, and I do spot back handsprings because they want them to learn right. I mean, if you have a boulder that you can use, that's a great training tool, and that works very well. If you have a pit, they can do a back handspring and learn it into the pit very easily without you spotting them. But once they have learned a back handspring, I should not have to teach them to touch them again, because they've done all the fundamentals of body shaping and body positions, and they've learned that that fundamental skill of back handspring, the handstand, the cartwheel, front walkover, back walkover about that time. And you don't really need to spend a lot of time spotting. Bumping, I would never do. Only time you would bump is if a kid takes off and you know they're going to get hurt if you don't lift them a little bit. But you better bump and catch when you do that. When I spotted fulls or doubles, the kids pretty much already had that skill. I would touch them to show them I was there as they came off the floor, and then I'd catch them at the end. It's called a safety spot. But I would never do all this stuff in the air and spot them through the complete skill, because that's not teaching them anything. And in many ways, it keeps our kids from learning. They need to learn independently so that they own that skill. So it's not my skill, it's theirs. I hope that makes sense.
Yes.
Okay. Questions on that? One thing I want to go over really quick, and then I promise I'll do conditioning. Front and back walkovers. I do not do bridges any longer. I haven't for about 4 years now. Reason being that our lower back only has 12 to 13% mobility. Our upper back has 70 to 80% mobility, and we should not be using our lower back. And most of us use our lower back when we do bridges. We know that's not right, but we do it anyway. So I no longer do bridges. What I do instead is I have them put their feet flat against the wall on their knees, and they stand up with their arms stretched tall and active. I call these active shoulders. And they squeeze their shoulder blades together and reach back and touch the wall, and then come back, only using that upper back. So their core is engaged. And they can get farther and farther away until they can go all the way down to the floor from that position, which is very hard, okay? And stand up. Once they can do that, I have them stand up, and we'll start going to a high mat, to the wall first, and then we'll gradually, you don't even have to make it all the way down because you never bend that much, okay? But that's how I teach bridging. I don't ever do a bridge anymore. Now, so you ask about front back walkovers. I know you're not going to, you haven't asked it, but you would. But a front and back walkover is a lever skill, okay? Just as a back handspring, you're literally jumping to a back lever, stretching through your upper back, snapping, going through a handstand and snapping off the floor by blocking off the floor. Okay, that's what a back handspring is. A back walkover is nothing different. It's just on one leg. So you have one leg free in the front. You do a straight backward lever where you're actually horizontal or parallel to the ground. You stretch through your upper back to go in the handstand. You kick to a handstand, and then you lever out. When you do a beautiful back walkover like that, it's very easy to do it together. Because you have the point where they hit the back lever, where they touch the ground, and where they kick over and lever out. Front walkover is simply a lever in, a front lever, and then you stretch to the upper back, and then you reach in, with your hands in your head, you look for the front leg and stand up in a back from a back lever. So it's all levering and bending through the upper back. Now, let me tell you the reason why. I noticed in the college field, both at UK and at U of L, when I was, and at Oklahoma State, the people I was working with, I've also worked with LSU. And all of those schools have too many lower back injuries. Spondylosis is super big in our young adult population. That is lower back pain. At its worst, it's stress fractures of the lower back, which means you're probably not going to be able to do anything ever again. But we have varying degrees of it, and it's showing up in many of our younger adults because we have been bridging wrong all our life. Then 2 years ago, I was asked to be an expert witness in a court case where this girl arched so much that it put too much pressure on her blood vessels to her legs, and she became paralyzed. It's called surfer's myelopathy, and it's just showing up in cheerleading in the gymnastics world. So I was an expert witness in that, and it was like, oh my goodness, this has got to stop. So I stopped all bridging, because you all know we bend in our lower back. Every handspring our kids do bends in their lower back. We wonder why their legs bend, because their hips down are so heavy, they can't be straight. Yeah. Or if they are, it's like you see them in that lower back, and we're killing our kids' lower backs. We are not being responsible coaches. We have to understand, even in the gymnastics world, when you tap to do a giant swing, you don't tap through your lower back, you tap through your upper back to do that giant swing. If you tap through your lower back, you're going to arch over, and it's not a good giant. The skill where you do a straddle jump over the high bar and then you re-catch it, and that one, if you bend in your lower back, it'll push you away over the bar and you won't catch it. If you bend in your upper back, then you'll catch the skill. So we've got to realize that we're doing this wrong. So I wanted to mention that to you. Any questions?
So you just completely avoided bridges?
Yep, don't do them at all.
Huh.
And kids are learning so much better, and they know how to engage the core because they feel it all the time.
That's fun.
Do you only have that one drill where you get up against the wall and reach back for?
What?
Sorry. Do you only have that one drill for reaching back where you're up against the wall, or are there other ones?
No, that's it. That's it.
And that's basically in place of bridges for you?
Yes. Mm-hmm. Yeah. It's so much better for their bodies. The kids' lower backs stopped hurting. I mean, we have just been irresponsible, and it's because it's because we really didn't understand what the skill was.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I feel like once you've learned to arch low, it's one of the hardest things in teaching to change.
It is. And see, that's our engagement of our core. So when that core is not engaged, we don't have the maximum strength to any other part of our body, because our strength comes from our core. And when it's engaged, then the whole body can be strong and tight.
Yeah.
So we've been doing it pretty much wrong for years.
And it doesn't make it any worse that we have no hamstring strength at all.
Oh no, we have terrible hamstring strength. And we try to teach our kids how to jump better by jumping. It's like, no, your posterior kinetic chain, which is your glutes, your hamstrings, your calves, and your ankles, you know? So we're not really doing purposeful conditioning either. So segue into conditioning. So let's talk about conditioning. Any other questions on anything else?
I have something.
Yeah.
Like top girls body positions if we don't do bridging anymore. Is that only for like tumbling?
Top girl positions, I got that part, but I didn't hear the rest.
Like, do we not stretch? Like, what?
Okay. Okay. Yeah. Okay. So first of all, I hate scorpions. Mm-hmm. My daughter had a straight leg scorpion. I wouldn't let her pull it but about once every 2 weeks because it hurts their back. It is so hard to be strong enough to do that skill without it hurting you. Okay. I hate it. I'm actively trying to get rid of it, but I doubt if I ever will. Okay. The rest of the skills we can talk about. I do every day personally. I lift my legs forward 10 times sideways without putting my toe up and backwards. Your kids need to be doing those dynamic lifts against the rubber bands to really build up their front heel stretches, their scales, and their arabesque, okay? And then you can take 3 of my rubber bands put together. If you lay them down on the floor and you put one of them, loop it around the ankle, the top of the foot, and I do it twice so it's tight. Yeah, just like that. Loop it around the top of one of the foot, and then you have pull the other end with your hands. And so you're laying there on the ground and you lift your leg up and you pull it as far as you can and hold it. And then you pull it to the side like an overstretch and hold it. I also pull it across the body to the other side because we don't do those muscles, and we should. And I hold each one of those for a minute, and I do that at the end of practice for everybody, not just flyers. It's for flyers, but everybody does it. Then they roll over to their back and they do an arabesque and they do a scorpion the same way. And you have to keep them square, so you do it with a partner, keeping the hips on the floor, everything square. Okay. Those are 2 of the best exercises that we can do. The biggest thing you can do, guys, is getting into conditioning. Our joints, and this is kind of the secret to flexibility, our joints have 2 jobs, mobility and stability. They each do more of one of those than the other. Like my ankles are very mobile, my knees are very stable, hips are mobile, lower back is stable, upper back is mobile, shoulders are stable, neck is mobile, elbows are stable, and wrists are mobile. So they alternate. So now what happens, and I'm going to give you exercises for each one of those areas to prevent injury. I call it purposeful conditioning, because we do a lot of conditioning that's worthless, to be honest. And so what happens in flexibility is our body has these little sarcomeres, and they pull apart, allowing more flexibility based on a chemical process in our body that either allows it to pull apart or doesn't. So what our body does is it kind of has this conversation with itself. Let's say I'm getting ready to do the splits, which entails my hip area. Okay. So what my body's asking, well, is this hip stable enough? Is it strong enough? Nope. Is it mobile enough? Nope. Then I'm not going to let it stretch. It's not going to gain any more flexibility. You have to have strength before flexibility. Always. So that's the part we've been missing. We stretch them, we pull their little legs apart and everything. And we do get a little bit more, but we don't get it in the right way, and we're hurting them. Okay. So we have to spend time conditioning them appropriately so that when they stretch, their body allows them to gain new flexibility. Does that make sense? Mm-hmm. It's a synergistic effect. Make sense? So what I'm going to do is give you the exercises for each of those joints that I mentioned before that you need to be doing. And you can come up with your own little routine of exercises that you want them to do to build up their strength. Okay. I would encourage you to choose, and this is after warm up, to choose 6 exercises a day from the following ones that we're going to talk about, and do them for a minute. And then in between each one, you do 30 seconds of some aerobic type thing, like punching, burpees, hopping on one foot, running. So 30 seconds of a cardiovascular activity in between. And what you then have done is create a high intensity interval training. And for your older ones, you can work up to doing 2 or 3 of these a day. I've been working with Victor with Top Gun and with his older team, his co-ed team, and that's what they're doing right now to build up all their strength. So it works very, very well, and it also gets them ready for routines, because our routine is anaerobic, not aerobic. So running is one of the most worthless things you can do before practice. It really is. Do it if you want to do it after practice. If they need to lose weight or something, that's fine. But don't do it before practice, because it has the same effect as long stretching. Okay? So everything needs to be dynamic before practice, or high intensity interval type, anaerobic in nature. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Okay. So Let's talk about the ankles. I'm going to talk about the ankles and the wrist at the same time. And I'm going to give you just 2 or 3 exercises that you can use for each one. So first, if you take a single rubber band and you put it, I have one here in my drawer. Let's just pull it out here. So I have this rubber band and I'm pulling it this way and I'm pulling my wrist back this way. Okay. You want to do that 20 times every day, all directions, with both your wrists and your ankles. So that should be, there should be a corner in your gym when the kids get there, and they should get there 15, 20 minutes early. And they go to the corner and they do their wrist, 4-way wrist pulls, 4-way ankle pulls, and then their shoulder exercises that I'm going to tell you in a few minutes. Because those are stabilization exercises that they need to do every day of their life as long as they are an athlete. Okay. Some other things you can do with the wrist and ankles. You can get a big tub of sand or rice and put it in your gym, and they can stick their hand in there or their ankle in there and write their ABCs. That works on the small muscles of the wrist and hand and of the ankle and the foot. And those are good ones as well. Standing on one foot, I do this personally every day, balance for a minute on each foot, which is really important. You all should probably do it on a pillow or something soft, but it should be part of their routine. They balance on one foot all the time for a minute. Another thing you can do with the wrist, these are called motorcycle hands. I try to do 50 to 100 a day. And then these are hammers, and I try to do 50 to 100 of those a day. You can also do those against rubber bands too. The rubber band training, the resistance training with rubber bands, is one of the best tools for building strength because it has an equal pull throughout the whole skill. When you're using weights, use more to lift it up, and then the last part doesn't use as much. So I would prefer to use rubber bands over weights. To build my strength. You can also do something called toe walks. If you take off your shoes and you walk with your toes, it goes very, very slowly, but it's really good for building up the muscles in your ankles and your foot. Okay, so those are a few things that you can do for your ankles and your wrist. Questions on that?
No, those are good. I like that.
Now we're talking about the elbow and the knee. They are stable joints. What a stable joint needs is all the muscles surrounding it have to be equal in strength. In our legs and our arms, this is the worst problem and why we have so many injuries. Because instead of conditioning them appropriately so that they're equal in strength, we do all kinds of things for our biceps, nothing for our triceps. We do everything for our quads and nothing for our hamstrings. So I'm not even going to talk about those two. Just know that the biceps is lifting like this, and the tricep and the quads is your squats. Make sure when you do squats, and you do need to do them, that you hold them at different points in the squat to build up the appropriate muscles at that point. Like hold them just a little way down, hold them halfway down, hold them when you're parallel to the ground. I don't go below parallel because it opens up the meniscus in the knees, and that's not very good for most athletes. Then make sure that your legs are parallel. That means if your feet continued to grow, they would never cross. So you want them in parallel when you do squats. And this is also the way we should stunt, the way we should stand for throwing baskets as well, and the way our flyers should be in when they load in. Okay, so it's all that athletic stance is what it is. So we want to do that squats. Then let me tell you what to do for the lower leg, for the front of the leg, the shins. If you do 100 of these a day, you won't get shin splints. So if you sit in a pike and you flex and extend your feet 100 times every day, you need to do it every day at school or whatever they're doing. 100 times a day, you won't get shin splints. So that gets the front part of our leg. The back is our calves, so toe races. Research has shown that if we do hundreds of toe races, I have my kids do 200 all the way up and all the way down, that we will not have Achilles tendonitis. So I build up to doing 200. Don't go out and do 200 today because you won't be able to stand up tomorrow. So do 50, and then in a week add 50 more, another week add 50 more, okay? But they need to work up to doing 200 toe raises a day, and that's on a step, all the way up and all the way down, okay? Then for our quads, we already talked about squats. For your hamstrings, tons of exercises. Every single time they come to the gym, they need to be doing a hamstring exercise. The best ones are where you lie on your back. They're called hamstring bridges. You lie on your back and you bend your knees. Only your heels are touching the ground. And then you engage your core and lift your hips up so there's a straight line from your shoulders to your knees. That is the simplest one with both legs down. Then you can lift one leg up. And this is what I had my college kids doing. They had to do 1 minute with one leg up on each side, which is super, super hard. If they get really good at that, then you can add some hamstring push-ups, which are push-ups on your knees. You have somebody hold your feet down and you come up in a straight line. So you push off the floor, driving your arms to your ears. It's also a really good exercise for blocking off the ground. So block is that push and squeeze your upper back muscles together, okay? So those are the best exercises for hamstrings. Another one I really like is if you lean over something like a tumble track and you bend at your waist, somebody holds the back of you, and then you put your hands behind your head and lift your body, the top of your body up. Make sure you only do it to parallel. You don't want to arch. Okay, so you don't want to take away that engagement of the core in any exercise that you're doing. But you cannot do too many hamstring exercises, okay? In the upper arm, I already told you to do for the lower arm, you do the hammers and the motorcycle hands. For the biceps, it's the lifts. For the triceps, it's here and you lift something back like this, or you do sit in that crab position and do dips with your arms. I have my kids sometimes walk in a crab walk to the end of the floor and then do 25 dips with a high tabletop. Okay.
When you do those crab walks, which way you have their hands facing?
Oh, their fingers are facing their feet. Yes.
I just wanted to say.
Yes, absolutely. I'm picky about that too. Okay, so that's triceps. So those pretty much arms and your legs. Then when all those muscles are equal in strength, you will have a lot less injuries to the knee. Okay, because the problem is when our hamstrings are weak, we have patellar tendonitis, Osgood-Schlatters, ACL, PCL, LCL tears. All those things happen because they snap instead of being elongated enough through exercise and stretching that they are equal all over and they can stretch and they'll only get a little bit of a strain or something, okay? My kids have never had an ACL tear. They pulled their knees several times, but their hamstrings are super, super strong. That's all I worked on, hamstrings and glutes, for Whitney to get a standing double, literally.
She did them for a long time too.
Yes, yes. Yeah, she's still a pretty good tumbler now. She did her standing double off the edge of the tumble track one day about a month and a half ago. Into a pit, of course. But anyway, those muscles are super important. You cannot do too much for your glutes, your hamstrings. Now we'll talk about the glutes. Your hips, when they're in the best shape that they should be, and they're mobile enough, can handle up to 12 to 15 times your body weight coming down on them. That's a lot of body weight, guys. But most of our hips are not mobile enough. Every day I do the leg lifts, forward, sideways, and backwards, and you should go across the body. I'm not allowed to because I have 2 fake hips, but they should go also across the body. But they need to do those with rubber bands, and they need to do them daily. And they need to make sure their core is engaged as they do it so they're not using their lower back, okay? That's every child. That's going to be one of the greatest exercises you could do for mobility of your hips. Another one is the in and outs, like we did. I talked about a warm up where you lift your leg up in a lib and then you pull it to the outside and back in. Okay, so that's a really important skill to do. Also, the piriformis stretch where you put your heel of one leg on the knee of the other leg and stretch it out. Those are going to be really important for the mobility of your hips. Another I'm sorry.
In and outs with rubber bands.
Yes, you can do this with rubber bands as well too. Mm-hmm.
I had
And then
forgotten about that until you just said that.
yeah, we used to do them all the time when I did my rubber band grouping. Yeah. And then clamshell exercise where you lie on your side, then you bend your legs back and you only open your knees. You keep the heels together. It looks like a clam opening. That is also a very good exercise for your core as well as mobility in your hips. The best exercises for the hips are one leg squats, which are pistol squats, which are really good. Deadlifts, one leg or two leg deadlifts. So I do them with no weights, but you can have them use a small weight, or again, do them without any weight. And then candlestick rolls. Candlestick rolls is probably the best one. At Whitney's, when she was as strong as she could roll downhill with a can into a candlestick and roll up to her one leg at the top of the wedge. So there's not many kids that can do that. Some of you guys may be able to, but that would be a goal to get that good. So you candlestick and you roll up to one leg. Your candlestick, guys, you should be making sure that your level ones can go straight up and hold that candlestick. Even if they have to use their hands at the beginning to hold their hips up, it needs to be a straight up and down candlestick. As long as we're letting them pike, we're not building those glutes the way they should be. And I actually saw one guy blow his Achilles tendon because his glutes were not strong enough. His hamstrings were strong, but he could not do a candlestick. And I told him he was going to get hurt, and he did. So, yeah, we've got to really work on that. Questions on that? Lower back. Again, lower back's 12 to 13% mobility. Shouldn't be bending at lower back. We should be strengthening it. Plank holds, and any version of plank holds that you can do, but make sure their core is engaged when they're doing it. If they are arching at any point in that skill, it is not doing them any good. Okay. I no longer do hollow holds. Only several years ago, I don't remember exact year, that they had some gymnasts do hollow holds, and they found that the maximum they could hold it without it starting to injure their lower back was 17 seconds. And we make them hold it for 1 minute, 2 minutes, 3 minutes. We got to stop doing that skill. It's tearing up their lower backs. Instead, do one that's much harder. Go into a push-up and have them walk out and hold it as low as they can with nice engaged core in that layout position. I walk it out, they hold it for 10 seconds and walk it back, and they do 6 of them in a row, which is really, really super hard to do. So it's a push-up, walk it out to a hollow shape, hold 10 seconds, walk it back into a push-up. Extremely hard. Another exercise is called a bird dog exercise. And this is when you're on your hands and knees. And again, your core is engaged, and you lift your opposite arm and leg about 1 inch off the floor. You never want it to go above your hip, because when you do, you arch. Anytime your head is back, you automatically arch. So the head also always has to be neutral when conditioning, okay? So those are some of the best exercises. There's another one called T-rockers, and this one is really kind of hard to do. I would probably use it for level 5s.
Is that the one that had the girl like in the cartwheel T doing the turns?
Oh yeah, that is a different one, but that's an exceptional exercise. Do the long lunge, the 45-degree angle lunge, you lever, and then you turn the whole body. It's a great core exercise. Yes. I call them airplanes, so lever airplane. And it's really just the first part of your round off. So you get killed 2 birds with 1 stone. The T-rockers, you lie on your back and you have a 90-degree bend at your hips and at your knees. And then you do baby windshield wipers while pressing your lower back into the floor. Yeah, it's very hard to do. And your hands are in a T to hold it, to stabilize it. So there's some good exercises for your core. Questions so far? Making sense? You think you can take what we're doing so far and develop it into a routine? We have different things they do every day that they come, yeah, okay. Now let's go the upper back. I told you earlier the one I'd have them do, and I'd have them do it every day. The thumbs up, thumbs down one is a really great exercise. I'm going to give you, on my website, there are 31 stretches or exercises for the upper back and the shoulder area. So you can look at those. But another one that I like to have all my upper level kids, like 4s and 5s, maybe 3s could learn it, is called a shoulder press. And it really, really squeezes those shoulder blades together. It's great for building up those muscles. So what you do is you lie down flat on the floor, and you have an elevated surface, like maybe the edge of the spring floor, or you can use a panel mat. And they lay their forearms right here on the panel mat with their arms stretched out, okay? Then they bend their legs and they get in the hamstring bridge position with their hips up. Their core is engaged, so it's not a hip thrust. So now what they're going to do is press with their forearms to lift their head and shoulders off the ground. It's so super hard, so hard. But it's a great exercise. And even the isometric part, if you can't get it off the ground, will help you. But you have to make sure that core is engaged so you don't thrust your hips to lift the shoulders off the ground. Okay?
Like that.
For your shoulders, then, we need to be doing stabilization. Your shoulders are really a very stable joint. I know they move a lot, but it's only because they're only linked to the body by your clavicle bone, your collarbone. The rest of the linkage is ligaments and tendons. And we really have to strengthen this area and stabilize it. So this is one of those exercises I have them do pre-practice. I have a set of 8 of my rubber bands, and I attach them up high. Then I attach one in the middle, and then I attach one on the bottom of the floor. And they do pull downs all directions with those rubber bands, making sure that it's not, the whole shoulder doing it, it's the arm doing it. Just the shoulder muscles, not the whole torso doing the skill. And then the bottom ones, they do lift ups. And then from the side, we do rotator cuff work. Okay. That I think they need to do every time they walk in the gym. And if they can do it at home, that would be great too. Because shoulder stabilization is something that's truly left out. When I was at UK at 2.5 years, I was there, our injury rate went down by 80%. The last little problem was that the shoulders, they were hurting their shoulders. And so I asked the trainers, are you all doing shoulder stabilization? And they said, no. And I said, well, you start doing it. So we started doing that, shoulder problems went away. So guys, you need to be stabilizing their shoulders. We ask them to use their shoulders all the time, and we were literally not doing anything for them, okay? The last area is your neck, and these are concussion exercises. And I guess level 1, 2, 3s, you don't want them to do these exercises unless they're 14 or up, because they're isometric, and it's just not good to do isometric exercises for under 13. So what I do is if I press forward on my head and then I push back at the same time, I'm going to develop the muscles in my neck. And you do it side to side, and you do it diagonally as well. Okay. They're called concussion exercises. Would they prevent a concussion? Maybe, maybe not. You might still shake your head even if you're strong enough to keep your neck off the floor, but that's what they're called. So now, do you think you can take all of those and put them into a full body workout that's going to be purposeful for what we're doing? Can y'all do that? Yeah. That's what we have to do as coaches. We have to be a psychologist. We have to know our stuff, and we have to be able to condition them purposefully so that they are able to do the skills that we ask them to do. And the more that you condition them, you're going to find they can do the skills much quicker. any questions on anything.
Anything
Hopefully this has helped all of you all.
Do you have anything on co-ed stunning?
On what? Co-ed studying. Oh my
Co-ed studying.
goodness. Yes. Okay, so I have found all of these exercises are related to co-ed studying. And I tell you what I have done with co-ed studying. Like we were doing the toss full around, and then we were bringing it down to hands, and then doing a full around the other direction. And I found that breaking the skill down into its parts and making them hold that part helps them learn how to stabilize the skill. So we would do the full up, and they'd come down and they'd have to hold here for 10 seconds and then do the power press full up the other direction. And that really helped them to stabilize that stunt. The other thing is you have to understand, and you have to make sure they've got a good toss. I mean, oh my goodness. When I was in Finland, this is the thing I worked on so much, is because we like to toss with our lower backs, okay? And it's killing us. The toss happens, let's think about it. I hope you can still see me. But I have my hands on my girl, okay? She is going to jump first. So I'm going to go with her, and she's going to jump. And when she reaches the top of her jump, that's when she's weightless. And now I'm going to toss her and extend through my knees. We are really, really impatient, and we don't wait long enough. I used a medicine ball that had 2 handles on it. You can order them. It was a 16-pound one. And I made them go through that motion of tossing that ball and then standing up. And I'm not tossing it, but letting it go here and then tossing it into the air to get the proper technique for that. It worked really, really well. You can also use the rubber bands. You can put like 2 sets of 8. Now you have to have a few more for some of you guys, especially. And you wrap it around the front of your feet. And I put shoes on it on the other end of them. Just tie the rubber band around the shoe. And now I got the shoe. Okay. And so then I lift it, and then I stand up. It's a 1-2 motion, guys. And I think those are the best things that we can do for co-ed stunts. Make sure they're doing basics. Everybody wants to do rewinds. Everybody wants to do hand in hands. And we should not do those. We should do toss. When you can toss to 2 feet and do it really well, and it's easy for you, then you can toss to 1 hand, you know. But you need to do all the positions first before you toss to 1 hand. I mean, 2 hands, and then go to 1 hand, and then do the other hand. Don't skip the basics. Do the basics over and over and over again. Okay? Hope that helps.
Oh, yes, it does. Anybody have anything else? Walter, Taylor, Leah?
No, I'm good.
Okay.
Anybody?
Well, let me give you my phone number and my email address if you have any further questions on anything. And feel free to text me at any time. If you text me, though, please give me your name so I can assign a contact to you, because I don't answer random numbers. But my phone number is 859-494-1011. 859-494-1011. And just say, I'm so-and-so from ACE, okay? And then my email address is Debbie. This is a new one, Ricky, by the way. I have my old one, but this is a new one now. Debbie, DEBBIE .USASF@gmail.com. It's Debbie, DEBBIE.USASF@gmail.com. And if you think of anything that you need, or any questions later on come up, just feel free to text me or email me. Or if you have videos you want me to look at and critique, I'll be glad to do that as well.
Debbie, thank you so much.
No, thank you all for having me. It's been an honor just to be with you again, and how much I respect you, Ricky.
So I will try to find a time once this virus goes away where we can actually get you here.
Yeah.
We'll have some fun. I'll let you meet some of our pretty awesome kids.
Well, maybe I'll see other competition in the next year. Maybe if we get.
I will email you or text you. Guys, say thank you, please.
Thank you, Daddy.
Oh, you're so welcome.
Thank you so much.
You're so welcome.
I've missed you.
Yes, thank you.
Y'all are so sweet. Thank you for having me.
All right, Debbie. I'll email you in a couple minutes.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.